Okay, y'all, before we get into this, Leka Balk, baby. Let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tucci-Zala, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. Well, today, this was an interesting showdown. You know, probably the greatest pageantry-wise rivalry in rugby. The All Blacks versus Springboks in Twickenham. The All Blacks got shellacked, and I mean wiped off the pitch simply just by lack of discipline and just overall not coming in hungry. You know, the Springboks, they came in with a lot of questions to be answered. You know, who was going to be their real center combination? Would Andre Esterhuizen and Canan Moodie lining up work? Would just the team be ready to face the World Cup? A lot of people were predicting, you know, that pool stage exit. I personally was kind of worried. I am a Springbok fan myself, but, you know, I think they really alleviated a lot of our worries with their improved play and their statement win versus the All Blacks in what was at one point a 35-0 unanswered shellacking until a Cam Roygaard's try in the 70th minute helped open up the team to, while not being skunked ever, it was probably, if not the worst loss in New Zealand rugby test history. I would say the man of the match for today would have to go to two people, Canan Moodie and Kurtley Arendse. Both of them set up all the tries in different ways. You had Kurtley Arendse having two very nice interceptions that, well, one led to a solo score by himself and another just kept the momentum going. And Canan Moodie answered a lot of questions that just no one really thought was going to be answered. You know, he brought it defensively for his first game at test level, you know, to show that kind of immense strength, that wherewithal to go bring it to the All Blacks and take it to, you know, his opposite number, Enrico Ioane, and set the tone for that line was something that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting, you know, more of a slotting the utility back in the center line, you know, just trying to patch some holes, not really expecting a whole lot. But he showed up, he showed out. His two turnovers, while I believe one of them didn't count and the other one was a knock-on to score, you know, he really set the bar for what I expect the center combinations to be. I think Andre Esterhuizen and Canan Moodie could be the form starting 15 for that Springbok lineup. You know, is while you do have Damon Dale-Linde and you do have Jesse Creel, they're getting old, they're getting up in age. Andre Esterhuizen too is up in age, but Canan Moodie for what, 20-something, I think he's 20 years old, balled out. He definitely set the tone for the future of the Springbok jersey. You know, a lot of the guys on both sides, they're not going to be back in Twickenham anytime soon. They're either going international, they're retiring, they're setting themselves up for differences in their lives. This new crop, this new generation, that Arendse, that Lebach, that Canan Moodie generation, they need to step up and they need to set the tone for the next couple years, and they did. I think the biggest thing that you have to talk about with that loss was just the lack of discipline by the All Blacks. You know, I did miss the first, I think 15 minutes. I just caught the Sia Khaleesi first score of the game, and you could clearly tell that they were just not hungry. You know, they walked in, assumably speaking, you know, ready to just take it to the Springboks and just expecting an easy win. But as we all know, it's all about the hungriest man on the field. And, you know, when you're coming off an 11-game winning streak, you know, Ian Foster's looking really nice this year with his coaching selections. You have everybody just on a roll. The All Blacks looked great in the Rugby Championship, especially against the Boks. They dismantled Australia. They did a damn good shellacking against the Pumas. You know, it was bound to happen. I'm glad that the Boks are able to bounce back because there was just too much questions. You know, you have the overhanging factor of just where is this team going? What is their offensive direction? And they brought both. They had kept their original set piece based flair. They moved in and did a lot of great things attacking the ball with their rush defense. Now, did it leave a lot of options on the field for the All Blacks to score from? Yes. Were they all missed opportunities, thankfully? Also, yes. But, you just got to dial that in. And I think both sides will have their deficiencies really locked down. I think the scariest thing, though, for the All Blacks team this year moving into the World Cup was the loss of Tyrell Lomax, possible loss of Ethan de Groot, and who knows, hell, you may even be looking at a loss of Scott Barrett into the World Cup opener. That's huge. And the only thing they really dominated at, and the New Zealand side of the pitch, was actually surprising, the scrum. You had Lomax, you had Fletcher Newell and de Groot. They were all, when they were on the field now, held it down at scrum time and forced a lot of decisive penalties for the Springboks. That kept the All Blacks in move. Now, looking forward, who could I see that would have to slot in and be an effective player? You could probably say, the easiest one would be Tamaiti Williams. That guy is a freak. But you could see a lot of guys, specifically from that Chiefs lineup, or heck, even stalwart Joe Moody coming back and slotting into that position. Hopefully that will be the case, but they're looking a little listless on the front row. I think that's something to be worried about. Dane Cole specifically looked broken, especially after that Curtly Arnsa score. And I think that's why on the 30th minute they slotted him out in form of Samasoni Tokeaho. I don't know if he'll be... I hope he'll mentally re-round back, but he looked out of sorts after the first 20 minutes. And that score where he failed to tackle Curtly Arnsa really hurt him. Just mentally, it might be a blockage. Who knows? But I think he really was the bar setter for the entirety of the All Blacks team after that 30th minute. You could tell that they were broken. You could tell that they just weren't. They wanted it to be over. A good reminder for all my college football fans out there would be, for all my Trojan football fans, fight on. But it just reminded me of the 2004 game against Oklahoma. After the second half, everybody just wanted to go home. It just didn't look the same, and no one really brought it. Cam Roigard came off the bench, and he had one of his nastiest pick and goes, his trademark of Super Rugby, and he brought it, and he scored to keep them from getting skunked. That was huge, I think, for momentum, but they looked exhausted. They were pushing them all around the block, and I think the biggest play that really set that apart was that Arnsa score, and I'll tell you why. I think the play just all starts from here. Jordy Barrett spots a gap in the C area, or also on the 30th man on the defensive line. He spots it, shoots it, takes about 5 meters after contact, I believe gets tackled by Faf de Klerk. Now, he has options on both sides as an offload as he readies up. He has Will Jordan in the C-man area, the prime offloading target, and he has Mwanga out the back. Either way, it probably would have been a Will Jordan score, or hell, maybe even a Mwanga offload. We never really will know. But Curtly Arnsa, credit to him, great view and IQ off the offload, sets himself up in position to just slot in where Will Jordan would have been and say, my ball, takes it in, and starts the shellacking. Now, if you look at the play from the replay angles, you're going to see, from the broadcast, you can't see it. But if you look at from the all 22 in the end zone view, you can clearly tell that Arnsa and Mapimpi are scooting up into that inside gap to try to either take away the Bowden Barrett option on the outside, and Arnsa marks Mwanga at the back. No one really sees Jordan except for the defensive line. When it's broken through, it becomes a broken play. Jordy Barrett sees this, and he sees Jordan butt naked open, decides to slot it. Now, Arnsa, seeing this, moves off of Mwanga and skirts in front of Will Jordan to take that ball away. I think that was key, and no one's behind them. Everything was open except for Dane Coles at that last second, and he just takes it back and scores, and that's really all there is to it. That was just great IQ, and him and Kane and Mooney shared that all week in the park. They rolled through them. they answered a lot of physical, unabated questions by the All Blacks, and All Blacks had no answer to counter to them. That just is what happens, and it is what it is. Do I think that the All Blacks could face a pool stage exit? I don't know. I hope they'll be in the 4th to 5th place contention game, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if they can recover from this game and what kind of teams that they'll be rolling through, especially against that France game next week. I think that'll be a killer game for the All Blacks to really test their mettle against a now kind of floundering, listless lineup with the French. With the Springboks, do I think that they'll be in a pool stage exit like I did before? No. I think they'll be in contention for that 2nd or 3rd place. I hope they make the final. I do not really know. My favorites still for now are the Irish to win it all this year. I think the biggest pool stage upset will be England this year. I think England is looking really lost, more lost than France is without their star and Romain Ntamack. They just have to fix culture. Everyone's still conflicting on whether or not Eddie Jones really was the problem. And to be totally frank, I don't think he really was. If you look at the way England has been playing, they've been playing a mixture of undisciplined footy and just desperation. It is not the same. The culture is different. Borthwick can only do so much, and in this short period of time. And I think the worst part was that he was slotted in a World Cup year, just like Eddie Jones was with Australia. I think it all depends on who you think will set the tone. I think in England's test versus Fiji is where you're going to see that. Fiji's going to come hungry and hopefully bring it to England. We're going to have to see. But I definitely think that England is looking on the long way out of getting out of the World Cup early and going home. To preview the Australia test, I think it's interesting selections by Eddie Jones, going for the front row of Nella Tupou and Angus Bell. Angus Bell, in my opinion, was my forward of the year for Super Rugby, at least in Australia, and for the Rugby Championship. He busted everyone up, no matter who he faced. He has the speed of a center, he runs with the power of a prop, and he has the playmaking ability that only U.S. fans will know from Jared Adams. He is an absolute freak. I think he's a prototype for the modern day prop, and I definitely see him making moves, going to hopefully a World 15, and pushing Australia forward. I think the Wallabies will have a lot to prove versus France in Sunday's matchup, at least in U.S. time. Monday for the rest of the world in the Southern Hemisphere. Good luck to them. Carter Gordon's another one to look out for. He's going to be absolutely running amok, especially with the lack of really anyone else on the pitch. I mean, yes, you have Ben Donaldson. You have the rest of that lineup ready in terms of utility. But what you don't have is just a true 10 option. And to be frank, you probably should have went with including James O'Connor in that lineup. Now, do I think he's good enough to captain the Australian A? Yes. Do I think he'll be a injury cover going down the line? Of course, but Carter Gordon can't do it all. You got to put him in the fire. You got to give him minutes. You got to make him work. But I think to give him the entirety of the breadth of it, unless they maybe have an idea of slotting Ben Donaldson in later, is going to be something they're going to have to look at moving forward in the World Cup to take some load management off of him. I mean, you have Jordan Pataya. You have the rest of that unit who has decent depth. But when you have another guy in a James O'Connor who showed his worth in all of Super Rugby and in the Rugby Championship to really push teams forward just off of it, not only his playmaking, but power and ability to move. Like, I think there was a game where he had a ball, chipped it down the wing. It was in Super Rugby, I'm relatively sure. And he caught it, saved it from being on the sideline, snaps it between his legs, and gets it to set up a score. Like, you need that kind of playmaking ability. Does he have the same speed and juice that he did, when he debuted all those years ago? No, but I think with that kind of You need experience, you need a mentor for him, and you need growth. Ben Donaldson's almost as young as Carter Gordon, but he's not going to have that same breadth of experience, that same, ability to see all aspects of the field like a James O'Connor would. So you just have to look into that. Another thing to really look into would be the lack thereof of a captain presence in that lineup and what happened to Tate McDermott. It has Will Skelton, who has never captained a team at test level. I haven't really watched his film when he was in France, but maybe he's taken over in camp. Who knows? I always thought Tate McDermott would be the captain of the Wallabies. He's shown his worth on the pro and Super Rugby and on test level leadership and all of the above. He plays all 80 minutes. It just makes me wonder really what happened to him. Did something change? Did Skelton come out on top on camp? Perhaps Eddie Jones obviously knows something that I don't. And this is another mystery, I guess, that we'll see moving forward in this lineup as we go through to the World Cup. Another question I have returns back to the All Blacks is, are they wasting Will Jordan? I think that it will be answered if you can play off of talent on the wing, but Will Jordan's a freak no matter where you put him. Hell, they could probably put him outside a prop. They could probably put him anywhere on the field and he'll score tries. The guy is just that good at sniffing out the end zone. But I think putting Beauden Barrett at that spot to give them that dual pivot hasn't worked. It's proven that in the World Cup, and you need to get him in a decisive option. You can already tell that Beauden Barrett, he wants to go back to 10. He wants to get out of that pivot. He hates being at fullback, And while he did look a little odd this year, a lot of people ask me, why. If you look at what coaches have said in interviews during the games, they like, at least on the Blues, who Joe Schmidt, who coaches him, is the attack coach in the All Blacks, would probably have the same philosophy of they want him, Beauden Barrett, in that space where he can be a prime decision maker to manage the space instead of creating moments for himself in that spot. Now, is it a different Beauden Barrett than what we've seen from the run all over the field, kick it, run amok, and score Beauden Barrett? Yeah, but I think it comes with a mixture of just the lack of the amount of injuries he's had in his career and, his fear of, after being in Japan, of getting back into that kind of contact stage. Yes, you've seen him at Rucks, at least in the Super Rugby level, but he looks different. He looks a little gun-shy from taking it flat. And when you have a guy like Will Jordan who works with that space, has a massive boot, and can move mountains, especially in the clean-out duty, I think that they're wasting a little bit of talent not having him at 15. Yes, they're putting the most talented people on the pitch, but will they be able to see that kind of talent put to proper use and realize the potential of him before Razor gets in? One's to tell, but I don't think so. I hope that changes, though. Okay, now let's pivot back to more domestic American rugby. In terms of end of the season, I think it's only fair now that we give it a full report card and a Haas selection style format of what could really be, the superlatives with teams this year. I think the most improved team has been the Dallas Jackals and Old Glory DC. They've put the right steps forward. Although Dallas still had a very disappointing year, all things considered, they set the tone with proper physical play at the breakdown, which they're desperately needed. While they did lose Eric Naposki to the Miami Sharks, he definitely brought in some talent on the draft and be able to fill that spot a lot easier. And they have the positioned people in the right spots to get them higher in the pool boards. If you look at where their losses were, if they weren't blowouts, they were in single-digit scores. You look at the Toronto one for sure. But these are games that Dallas could easily win next year with better coaching and a more improved lineup. I think that'll all come. You won't see it till maybe mid-season next year, but you'll start to see an improved Dallas Jackal lineup with improved fury and a more hungry nature to get themselves into that inaugural playoff contention just ironically, like their counterparts in the East, Old Glory did. Old Glory absolutely set the tone for the East with NOLA in terms of their ability to move the ball on both ends. They had great forward play. Their backs led by Kurt Baker. Man, what can I say that hasn't been said already? Him and Tusitala are absolutely freakish when you combine them on the pitch. They had everyone all around making plays, setting up plays. You had great offload talent. Yes, was it maybe a little chippy to, do his celebration from sevens on the way to knocking out New York? Yeah, but, you got to celebrate individual brands and talent, and Old Glory has it. Their draft was okay. I'm not going to say it was great. I would probably give it a C to C- grade, in my opinion, in comparison to the other teams I've highlighted in our previous episode and later rounds that really showed their ability to draft sleepers. But if you look at next year, I would say Old Glory maybe doesn't get into that 2 seed. I think that with the improvements of Miami, that what they've brought in terms of the Uruguay talents and their Argentinian flair, might take that 3rd spot next year. I think you will see a drop to the 4th seed in terms of Old Glory's form, but best be assured, any team going to DC is going to face some problems. As for most disappointing, I think the answer is obvious. It's the Chicago Hounds. They're my team, and I hate to dog on them, pun intended, but for you to have a roster combined of the 2 best teams in the sport for the last 2-3 years, and to stink it up that bad, like, you gotta something wrong. You have Sam Harris, who's one of the best coaches, arguably on paper, in the MLR. Now, did they show signs? It was all flashes, and that's the one thing I hated about them. All they did was have flashes of brilliance and then look for the home run ball and scuttle every single shot that they had. They have to get more help in the set piece. Their scrums in the front 5 looked terrible. Their line out was anemic. They didn't have anything outside of their playmakers in the backs, and I think it showed. Your team gets tired. They need help. What are you going to look for? You have nothing to give. Now, in the draft, did they show up? Yeah. Dylan Denenberg is a fire athlete, and he will show up and create more holes for that team. I think, when you have Big George Thornton coming back, Patty Ryan coming back, that team hopefully will get re-energized. I hope it was just a chemistry issue. Bringing a lot of these individual talents from across the league into this side will probably be a moot issue going into next year, but they have a lot of issues to fix and a huge target on their back in terms of where they will go, how they will do it, and what kind of team they want to be next year. Do you want to be that with team that'll kick and keep up with San Diego? Do you want to be that flair but powerful team that they tried to be, that scrappy mongrel mentality type of team? I hope they lean into that direction, because I don't think with the way that they play that they can keep up with anybody on the wing width-wise, but we'll see what happens. Rising star on the team, on the league, would probably be Houston. They were my dark horse team to win the championship this year. I was severely disappointed, but they did lose the way I thought they would in Seattle, so I guess it goes to show where they will go. But where they have, they have Pote Human coming back from his suspension. I think he was pivotal in turning that team around. Davy Kotza, they lost Danny Barrett and a whole bunch of those boys, but they have a young crop of huge talents. You always have Damakina. You have guys like Hanko Gamashis. The entire team is loaded. They will grow. They will be in that championship contention as long as they don't get knocked out by Chicago if they ever, right the ship. But I would say that Houston and San Diego will have the best chance of retaining that MLR Western title. I think Houston took their foot off the gas, but I think that it'll change next year. They'll be a lot more fired up, unfinished business, ready to ball. And then you have the Rookie of the Year as my final superlative. And the answer is also obvious. It's Rarita Biddle. That guy is the epitome of the modern fullback, that utility style to be able to play flat, play first receiver, play off, off the back of pods, be that boss, manage the space, have that playmaking ability, that Damon McKenzie level of wiggle to his run, to be able to set up offloads. And that's the job of a modern player. And Rarita steps it up. His debut season off of New Zealand Sevens, he was amazing. I think he'll do great things with Tarango Rio Raitokia in Canada. You will see the Arrows ball out next year, hopefully, as long as they can get their injuries and coaching under control. But you have a great, great player. They will not waste him. Best believe ATL, now LA, has a huge gaping hole that they hope that Matt Antisev can fill in for them. And it'll either be the greatest gamble of all, or just like their move to LA, a flop. Well, we will see. But that's it for me this week, guys. Thank you so much for coming in. Hope to see you next Monday. Peace.